Alright, quick video today. I wanted to get this out before episodes 4, 5, and 6 come out as to share some information that we might see upcoming. If you want absolutely zero spoilers going into the next few episodes, then maybe skip this, but it is just a theory, so I'm really interested to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like our channel and you want to see more content like this in Christian media world and the chosen world, then definitely subscribe and like this video. It really helps us out. Now, here's my theory upcoming, and it has to do with the Romans in particular. Obviously, if you haven't seen episodes 1 through 3, this is a big spoiler for episodes 1 through 3, so don't watch this video. Stop watching this video. That's your last spoiler warning. Okay, let's continue on. So going into episodes 4, 5, and 6, I think there's going to be a major change when it comes to Atticus, Quintus, and Gaius. Specifically Quintus and Gaius. And there's a lot of different things that I want to talk about here, including a biblical tie-in that I think is going to be really cool. Of course, we see as Quintus kills Rama in the last episode of the last 3 episodes that we saw in theaters. Episode 3, the last moment there. This is obviously a huge thing, and we see that Atticus kind of pulls Quintus away and is very upset at him. Now, of course, Rome isn't going to care that much that one woman dies, especially since she's a woman. She's not Roman. It's not going to be that big of an issue, but everything put together with Quintus is going to cause a really big issue. Obviously, Pilate is like killing people all the time. He has them crucified. He's, famously a pretty ruthless leader in Judea there. And so obviously they're killing people all the time, but this is a little bit different with Quintus kind of losing control of his area altogether, specifically Capernaum here. Now we see as Gaius also defies Quintus during this whole thing and tells him no 3 separate times. This is totally not normal, right? Totally not something that I thought that we would see originally, but I'm glad that we get to see this moment where Gaius really defies Quintus. Now, the important piece here is what Atticus actually talks to Quintus about a little earlier on. Now, right before Gaius defies Quintus, we see that Atticus has a conversation with him, telling him that he admires his ambition, thinking that he wants Quintus to take the fall for everything. I don't necessarily think this is exactly what Gaius was going for, but he did allow this to happen, and he wasn't going to arrest Jesus because he just felt like he couldn't, and he shouldn't during this time. Of course, Quintus was kind of letting everything get out of control, and we saw what happened because of that. Now, in this moment, Gaius is obviously arrested, and we're going to see the aftermath of what's going to happen not only with the apostles and everything that happened with Rama, but also with the Romans here. And I think there's going to be a pretty big switch up in what's going to be happening. Now, over the last several seasons, since season 1, we've seen as Gaius has moved up the ranks. At first, he was a centurion who was stationed with Matthew to watch him at the tax booth. Then he was able to kind of gain momentum and authority as he did better and better things, partially through Matthew's help, and then now he's what's called a primi ordine, and this is kind of the centurion of centurions. He's head above hundreds of other soldiers now, commanding basically an entire army in the Capernaum area, at least if it holds to what a primi ordine is in Roman culture and Roman history. So now we're seeing as Quintus is the magistrate, he's the praetor, he's Dominus, as we know, right? And so he's the leader there, and Atticus and Gaius are kind of at different levels here. Gaius is obviously below Quintus, as Quintus gave him that role. Atticus is somewhere amorphous, kind of off to the side of Quintus, maybe not really above him, but having some authority closer because he's so close with Pilate. So there's a lot of kind of gray area there, but Quintus is certainly above Gaius as the magistrate. And so we're going to see some changes here. Let me go through a little bit of what we know from Quintus from the first 3 seasons, and then let me jump into my theories and what I'm thinking here. First of all, we see Quintus from the very beginning of the show. If you don't remember this, I'll play a little bit of it. This is the first time we ever see Quintus here, and he's obviously wearing a Roman soldier uniform. Now, the budget was a lot different back then, right? This is the very first kind of opening scene after the opening theme for episode 1 of season 1. So he's wearing kind of like a Roman uniform there, a little bit more generic, especially with the helmet and everything else that's happening there. Budget is obviously a lot lower, but it's a Roman soldier outfit overall, right? He's wearing leather uniform, not like a ton of metal or anything like that. Season 2, we see him definitely way more in the magistrate kind of area, especially with his clothing here.
They eat their fish raw. Peel off the scales, cut off the heads and tails, and take a bite. It's quite something.
So we see him there. Then season 3, the exact same thing, a little bit bumped up again. Every season the costumes get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. But we see Quintus again here wearing that same thing.
Caesar. Now, what do you want?
Yes,
and of course, Atticus and Gaius here. We see Gaius wearing his Primi Ordine, kind of full metal suit as well. However, in season 4, at least after these episodes that we've just seen, there's definitely going to be a change. And I started to recognize a lot of these little things that were kind of going on. So let me point out some of these things. First off is this scene that The Chosen just released this morning. They released it a couple of days ago, actually, through an email. And even further back than that, they showed this entire scene back in a live stream a few months ago in Brazil. And so this is something that we've already seen, but the ending of this is really, really interesting. Let's watch this. Keep in mind, I believe this is episode 4 of season 4.
Is the former publicanus Matthew at this residence?
So that's the very end. We don't see anything else here in this moment. We see as Julius, who of course is Gaius's sort of second in command for the last couple of seasons, walks up to the apostles and to Jesus and asks for Matthew specifically. I at first did not understand why this would be. Why would Quintus want to see Matthew? And then I thought to myself, wait a second, what if it's not Quintus? What if Quintus, because of what he has just done, gets fired, killed, or even demoted? There's something crazy that's going to happen in these next few episodes and maybe in the next season overall of where Quintus is going to be. Now, if we move forward here, we can see that this is the aftermath of the scene that we just saw. Not only does Matthew go, but Peter actually goes with him to Quintus's office. And we don't really get to see who they're meeting with. Now, at first, people just weren't sure what was happening here. Obviously, this is Quintus's office, but Dallas was really, really sneaky here in how he showed what's going on. We can clearly see that this is Quintus's office. We know it. We know the chairs. We know the desk. Everything kind of matches. And there's some other promotional material as well that kind of led us to think Quintus was going to be doing some different things this season. However, they kind of tricked all of us for sure. Because we can see now that this is most likely going to be Gaius here, who after Quintus is taken out or brought to a new position or demoted or whatever, Gaius is the one that takes his place. One, we've never seen Gaius this happy before. And also, we can see that this is definitely a magistrate's uniform. It's different than his normal kind of Roman garb that he was wearing previously. So we see right here that Quintus definitely looks very similar to what we see Gaius wearing in this image right here. Very similar neck area here, very similar magistrate sort of feeling clothing. This isn't just Roman clothing. I think it's definitely a bit more than that. Now we also see for the first time in a long time as Quintus is wearing this, a more Roman style soldier-like outfit here. I cannot remember for the life of me if he's wearing this when he is getting his bust sculpted. I just can't remember. I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to think back as to what he was wearing, but I don't think that he was wearing this in the earlier episodes. This may be something that happens later. So this is kind of like a lower prediction for me. I know for sure that we're going to get this, right, with Gaius being the new magistrate. I just don't know exactly where Quintus is going to go. Does he become a centurion? And if so, where does that tie in to the other things, right? Would he become a centurion, or would he become something else entirely? Would they punish him so much that they would kill him or take him out of the show? I don't know. It's a totally unknown kind of area that we're in here, but there's a couple of different things that I want to talk about overall after I show you a few more pictures. So we've got these pictures that we got from Dallas, a bunch of different selections of these that are all of the different characters. Of course, we have Lazarus here, and the key thing about these these pictures is that they're giving us a lot of hints as to what's actually happening in the show with them, because each of the backgrounds are actually slightly different depending on what character we're looking at. Now, of course, we're looking at Lazarus here. One, he's in his grave clothes, so we know this is probably after he's resurrected or as he's dying or something like that. Then we also see behind him the stone, of course, that's rolled away, and he's able to come out of that tomb, right? So very much telling us that this is Lazarus and what's going to be happening to him. Now, we see Quintus here, and he, of course, has the swords all around him, telling us something for sure. And then we have this kind of Roman shield that's behind that. Really, really interesting things. Now, when we look at Gaius's specific poster here, there seems to be some interesting things that are happening. Part of this is a Roman helmet, of course, with that red mane that's on top. And then the other half is similar to that shield that we saw on Quintus's there. So this could be saying basically that there's going to be some sort of change in Gaius's life. I think a lot of the promotional material that we've seen in the past actually has done a lot to show us kind of like what's upcoming, foreshadowing and hiding little Easter eggs in the promotional material this year specifically, more than I've seen in the past. So this is really, really cool to see. But what does this tell us about Gaius specifically? Well, let's start with Gaius, and then let's move to Quintus. So with Gaius specifically, this tells us that we can look at two different scripture verses here. First, looking at Luke 7. This is the thing that we've been talking about for the last season, knowing that Gaius is the centurion with the sick servant. Now, here it's the centurion in Luke chapter 7. It says that there was a centurion in Capernaum, now a centurion had a servant who was sick at the point of death, who was highly valued by him. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and heal his servant. Okay, so this is a version of this story, or one of the two stories that we're going to be talking about, where a centurion has a sick servant. That centurion says, basically, I tell all of my soldiers what to do. I know that, I tell them to go and they go. I tell them to come and they come. I tell them to do this and they do it. So I know that you have the power to heal from afar. You don't need to come to my house. You don't need to come here. So this centurion had great faith, okay? And then Jesus says this line, he says, I tell you, not even in all of Israel have I found such faith as this, right? And so this is a pretty big moment here where a Gentile has now this large amount of faith and knows that Jesus can heal even if he's not there in person. This is a pretty big thing. So the centurion and his sick servant, that gets healed, right? But then in John chapter 4, we see that it's an official's son, okay? So at Capernaum, there was an official whose son was ill. When this man heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went to him and asked him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So what I think The Chosen has done, like they've done in a lot of different areas, is combine these two stories. So not only is it Gaius, who was the centurion, but then he becomes a magistrate or an official of the city, right? In order to have both of these stories come in at the same time. And not only that, but his son is also his servant, right? It comes from a servant woman, and his young servant also happens to be his son. So these two stories are definitely melded together. I assume maybe Matthew is the one that is going to tell Jesus, because he is kind of like figuring out what's kind of going on here with Gaius, especially in the last couple of episodes. But we also know that Peter already knows what's going on with Gaius and has been kind of sworn to secrecy and hasn't really told anybody yet. So I wonder how that's going to play out. But obviously Peter and Matthew are both entrenched in this, as we've seen from the behind the scenes footage from a long time ago as well right here. So yeah, a lot of really interesting things for sure coming up with that. I think as well, this is kind of a lower percentage chance, but definitely with Quintus, I think there's a possibility that Quintus has now become the centurion at the cross, the one who says, surely this is the Son of God. That would be really an interesting arc to see him. It doesn't mean that he's going to come to faith necessarily, but it does mean that he maybe understands who Jesus was / is, even if it's all the way to that moment there. I'm not 100% sure how that would work or how they could logically tell that story. It might be easier just to get rid of Quintus, but I don't know if they're going to do that either, since Quintus is such a beloved villain here. But he's obviously, like we've been talking about over the last few seasons, he's not the top dog, right? We have Herod, we have got Pilate, we've got Caiaphas. Quintus is kind of small potatoes in comparison to them. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of different things that are going to come up, but I wanted to talk about this, get your thoughts before the episodes came out. Of course, I love talking about theories and upcoming things. So stick around on the channel if you want to hear more of that. We've got a lot to talk about coming up in our deep dives once these episodes come out on the app later on. So tons of stuff coming up. Stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll see you on the next